It's May 5th, 2019. I had a couple hours free this evening, so I went on the river outside of Oshkosh, right at the mouth of the river, and was pulling flies. It's a pretty popular pattern this time of year. It's a little early, but when the walleyes come back from spawning in the upper river lakes, they all have to go through. Any fish coming back has to go through Oshkosh, so it's a really good place to fish. And particularly the mouth of the river, there all seems to be guys fishing there. And last year I picked up quite a few fish pulling flies, right into June. So I decided to give that a try today. First of all, I got quite a bit of white bass. There's still a lot of white bass in Oshkosh, even though they're getting a lot of white bass in the upper river. So they're around. The ones I caught today seem to be really hard, like they weren't even ready to spawn yet. It's shaping up to be quite a run. We didn't have much of a run of white bass last year, and a lot of people were complaining, but it sure seems like they're on fire now. There's white bass all over, and still coming up the river from the lake. So good news about walleyes too. I caught two females today. One was 21 inches and one was about 17 inches. I also caught a smaller sauger, a 14-inch sauger, and then a bunch of little cigar walleyes, 10 to 12 inch walleyes would hit the flies too. So all in all, it was a good day. I fished for 2 hours and I probably caught 40 fish altogether. It was just fun to be out. A little cleanup. I had reports set up for the last 2 weeks and I wasn't able to get them up to YouTube. I'm having connectivity issues with my internet, and it was later in the week before I could actually upload them. And I had really done those reports talking about the weekend, so it really didn't make a whole lot of sense to talk about the weekend, the past weekend on Tuesday. So it was just a decision I made to not post a report. So planning on trying to do better, just trying to figure out where I can upload. YouTube is a little finicky about the way it does things, so if there's any kind of disruption or anything, the upload just stops. So I'm looking for a solution to that. Hopefully we can find one. So I was actually out several times in the last 2 weeks. About 2 weeks ago I pulled 5 walleyes from the 41 bridge, just drifting slowly outside. And it was a lot of fun. The water temperature had hit in the 50s, and the walleyes were actually hitting the bait pretty good. So I was jigging a small jig and a minnow, and I was getting really good hits on it, and it was just a lot of fun. Last Friday I went out with viewer Matt. I'd gone out with him a couple times last year, and we got together again and had a good time. We really struggled. We started early on Friday morning, and the water temperature had cooled off, and it was fairly windy, and it was really hard to do boat control. And so we had gone up and down the Fox River in Oshkosh, and same spots that I was a couple days earlier, and we weren't able to catch anything at all. So we took a little ride. We were planning on going to Eureka to fish there. And as we're going through Omro, we saw a bunch of people fishing in the river next to, I think it's called Stearns Park. And there's a park that kind of goes underneath the overpass there, and people were fishing underneath the bridge and toward the boat landing, and everybody was catching fish. Everybody's catching white bass. And so we watched for a little while, and we decided to try it. When you're casting the fly rig, so it's a 3-way rig with a short dropper to a sinker, and then a longer lead to a fly. So you cast that out, and the sinker hits the bottom of the river, and you're giving it a jerk to move the fly in the sinker. So the way it's been explained to me is you're trying to make the bottom of the river look like a golf ball. And we didn't have a lot of luck to start with, but then as we're watching everybody else fish, we just realized that they were using a certain cadence. It was a combination between jigging and long sweeps of the rod to pick up the weight. And then the one thing that would trigger the white bass is for there to be a slightly slack line. So the white bass looking at it must see the fly just coming back at him a little bit, and that would trigger the fish to bite. It was night and day that it really started hitting that. So learned a little trick. It was definitely useful, in the future trips, because I went last week. I think I went yesterday with Andy, another viewer. Actually, he was my first subscriber, and I was showing him the technique, and we were able to pick up a lot of white bass, with the fly rigs, and in this case we were in the boat and we were trolling them, but we were definitely catching a lot more than the people around us, and I think it led to that technique of letting the slack line, letting the fly in the slack line, and that really triggered the white bass. So it was a blast. We had a really good time. And yesterday with Andy, we also caught 7 walleyes. We caught a few at Steiger Park, and then we went up to the 41 Bridge, and then we actually went to the Black Wolf Reefs, Long Point, and Andy really likes to fish there, so we decided to give that a try, and we caught 2 15-inch fish, and then we saw a bigger fish being caught. So the fish are around. They seem to be all over the system. At least this week they seem to be hungry, so it's a good time to get out and about. The spawning run seems to be winding down. Every day more fish are coming back from the Wolf River, into the lake, so they're going through Oshkosh, and it's a really good time to start fishing in Oshkosh and around the mouth of the river, and then even into the reefs. It doesn't take the fish long to start dispersing from the lake, so we're really into it. I mean, this is the time to catch a lot of walleyes, and it just seems like it's going to be a really good year. There seem to be a lot of walleyes around, and people talk about there not being enough bait in the system, and the number of bites I'm getting, it kind of makes sense that that's the case, but the fish I was catching today, they sure seem solid, and they sure seem like they were eating, so I'm not really quite sure what to make of that. I trust the DNR when they say there's not a whole lot of bait in the system, but those walleyes were eating something, so that's the report for today. I decided I'm not going to list the number of walleyes I've been catching, exactly. Just not real motivated, and something to keep track of that I really don't have an interest anymore. I'm catching a decent amount of walleyes, and I don't really see the need to keep track. So with this information, let's get out and fish.